Welcome, folks. It's great to have you here. One of our periodic pop-up political briefings, as we call them. We'll get going in just a minute. Hang tight. Enjoy 8 o'clock daylight here on the East Coast. It's a good thing. At some point, we'll actually have spring here. It's been really cold. It's been a cold spring here. Most of the East Coast. And we'll get going in just a second. Thanks for being with me here on a school night. Lots to talk about tonight. We are in webinar mode. When we do the public briefings, they're in webinar. When we do, for those of you who are paid subscribers to Hopium Chronicles, our private briefings are in meeting mode, more intimate, but these are in webinar mode. Okay, go on just a second, everyone. There'll be plenty of time for Q&A and discussion. I only will go for 10, 15 minutes at the beginning. I'm going to begin. You all ready? Excited? Fired up, ready to go? All those things. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Welcome, Anthony. During my presentation, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to do my stuff and then we'll talk. Okay. Okay, I'm going to begin. Welcome, everyone. This is a periodic pop-up political briefing that we do. There's just been a lot going on. I thought it'd be a good idea to get some folks together to talk about the events of the last few weeks. We had a big change in the political environment. The Biden campaign turned on and it began. And so we're learning a lot now about the early stages of this 2024 cycle. And I just thought it'd be a good time to do a check-in with all of you. So format, I'll go for 10, 15 minutes tonight. And then we'll open it up for Q&A in the way that we do Q&A on Zoom. It's just going to be in the chat tonight, not going to be, I'm not going to bring people into the discussion. We'll just do it through the chat. We'll go all the way to 9 if people want to go. And thanks for spending a work night, school night with me here in Washington, D.C. So I always start these discussions because we just had new census data come out about the election in 2022, and we're getting more data about what happened in the election. None of it is particularly earth-shattering for anyone who's been paying attention, but what happened in the 2022 election, and this is sort of the baseline to establish where we're headed in 2024, is that there were really 2 elections in America. There was the bluer election inside the battleground, a redder election outside the battleground. And this was an election that will go down in history as one of the best midterm performances by a party in power, and particularly in recent elections. It's the 3rd consecutive election where Democrats sort of performed at the upper end of what was possible for us. In 2018, we won by 8.5% nationally and flipped the House. In 2020, we unseated an incumbent president by 4 points, not an easy thing to do in our system, and won the Senate. And in 2022, we defied history and ended up actually not having the red wave that was supposed to come in a bad election, but we ended up having a really, really good election. We gained ground in the Senate and in state legislative chambers and governorships. Yes, we lost the House by a few thousand votes in a few races, but we really performed at the upper end of what was possible. And this was the 3rd election in a row, in my view, where the driving force of the election was fear of MAGA. The most dominant force in our politics is fear of MAGA. It has been since 2018. And any analysis that is done of our politics that doesn't really start there is just not going to capture what's been happening in the US. It is the driving force, and we're going to come back to that in a second. And so in the bluer states where in the battleground where we did well, our grassroots and the money that we raised produced these extraordinary campaigns. We actually gained ground over 2020 in Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. It's incredible. And for all of you who gave money and texted and made phone calls and canvassed and wrote postcards, we together did something really remarkable by gaining ground over 2020 and what was supposed to be a bad year. And so we should be really pleased and showed with what we did. We showed enormous amounts of political muscle, right? We were able to control, because of these large campaigns that we had, unprecedentedly large campaigns, because of this fear of MAGA that's driving so much activity into our politics. We were able to control the information, battleground in these the day-to-day information war in the battlegrounds, and control the information environment. And we also drove the early vote through the roof. I mean, we had a better performance in the early vote in 2018 and 2020. It's incredible achievement in an election where we were not supposed to be motivated. And so here we are, having had that election. But the admonition as part of that, the success, the admonition, the sort of the part that's also we have to deal with, is that outside the battleground, where we didn't have these muscular campaigns and we didn't control the information environment, Republicans made gains, and they made gains in New York and Texas and California and Florida, in particular, the four biggest states in the country. And that probably denied us the House in the way that it almost certainly cost us the House. But it's an admonition, it's a warning to us that, when we don't have these big muscular campaigns, they're still much louder than we are. And they're still able to bully the national media into believing things that are not true, like the red wave, and that they still have enormous power to set the agenda and to dominate the daily discourse in the United States. It's something they invested incredible amounts of money in over a long period of time. And they're not better than we are, but they still remain louder than we are. And it's why, I talk about this need to close the loudness gap in the Democratic Party, that we need to get louder. We have to become more intentional about being loud. And we need to be loud, as I talk about, not just in campaigns, which we've done very well, but we need to be loud 24/7, 365, and become what I call an information warrior for our democracy. All of us have a role to play here. And what I'd like to think about as we head into 2024 is we should imagine, when we think of the war room, I worked in the war room 31 years ago with Carville and Stephanopoulos and Paul Begala and the whole team. Tony Blinken was in the war room, the current Secretary of State. I mean, we had a pretty amazing group of people, but we, when we worked in the war room, when you think of the war room in your mind's eye, you think of like 20 sweaty kids drinking Red Bulls, cranking out, rapid response videos now. But what I want you to think about as the war room going forward is 1 million people, 2 million people wired together, amplifying Democratic content, our ads, our data, our narratives, our themes, our memes, all these things, and helping take the good things that we do and spread it into the daily discourse. To me, the most powerful way we can make up some of that loudness gap in the next few months, next few years, is going to be through the work of private people, just individuals, proud patriots who don't want to cede the daily discourse to the other side. And there's a lot more we can do here. I mean, just think about it. Fox News, Tucker Carlson reached 3 million people a night. Imagine if 1 million Democrats reached 10 to 20 people a day. That's a lot more than Tucker reached. And so I think we have more agency and power in this loudness effort, and then being an information warrior, than we all really understand. We can talk more about that in the Q&A. But to me, the biggest place where we have to be loud this year in 2023 is on the economy. And for those of you who follow my work at Hopium Chronicles, this has been something I've been talking about incessantly since we began 2 months ago, that there was going to be a big economic debate and in the country. And we're having that debate now around the debt ceiling, and that we need to win this debate. If we can win this debate with the Republicans, how we get there, we can talk about in the Q&A, the tactical way we win there. But if we win this debate with the Republicans by the end of the year and move the Democratic Party into positive territory in the economy, it will be the single biggest chess piece that we can probably move in this calendar year to make it more likely that we have the election that we want to have in 2024. If you look at the polling of where the Republicans are right now, they're way, way underwater. They're much more unpopular than Joe Biden is. Their numbers are historically terrible right now, particularly the congressional Republicans. And they're way underwater on all the issues that matter for voters, except one, and it's one that really matters, which is the economy. They're ahead of us in the economy. Some polls by a few points, some by more. It shouldn't be that way, right? Because the last 3 Republican presidents brought recessions and higher deficits and American economic decline, and the last 3 Democratic presidents brought strong job growth, GDP growth, lower deficits, and American progress. It shouldn't be that they're ahead of us on the economy, but they are, and we need to fix that this year. And I think we all have a role to play in that, in helping Joe Biden and the Democrats make the case for our good work. There's a lot of material on my site that you can use. I also do a presentation every month called With Democrats, Things Get Better. That's 30 minutes of data helping you get smarter about how to make these big arguments. My next showing is on Tuesday, by the way, if you want to join us, and there'll be a new recording. It's live and every month, because I update all the data every month for you to make it fresh and lively for you to do your work and be a proud patriot and information warrior. The second big thing I think we need to do this year is to get to 55. We have to reorient the way that we think about what's possible for us in our politics. The Republicans, I think, are ceding a lot of ground. They're giving us an opportunity to take rhetorical, demographic, and geographic terrain from them. And we have to go seize it. And, we were able to do it in Wisconsin. We got to, I call it get to 55, because I think we have to aspire to build on Biden's 51.4 and try to get to 55. We need this election to be seen as a repudiation of MAGA. We need to do it for the good of the country. It'd be good for us, but I think it would also be good for Republicans, right? To liberate them from the extremism that's overtaken their party. And so I think we have to try to go big this time. I think the people are aware of the ugliness of what's happened to them. They understand the ugliness of MAGA. We've litigated it now in the last 3 elections. And I think MAGA is getting worse, right? There's no way you can look at this thing they're putting forward and feel like they're making a move to the center or they're moderating in any way. They're escalating. It's getting worse. And we can use that, I think, to grow our coalition, to take this real estate that we need to take. And think about how in the battlegrounds, we got to 59% in Colorado, 57% in Pennsylvania, 55% in Michigan, 54% in New Hampshire. We just got to 55%, 55.5% in Wisconsin just a month ago in that Supreme Court race. We need to be thinking about how to expand and grow our coalition and to take more of this real estate as I'm describing. My next place I want to go take away from them is in Jacksonville, Florida, the largest city in Florida. It's DeSantis's sort of home terrain. We've got a great candidate there who's debating right now tonight, Donna Deegan, who I've been supporting and encouraging everyone to give money. Early vote has begun there. She needs your money, your phone calls, your texting, your postcards. We've got to keep working there. It'd be a big win for us. And it becomes an important part of how the road back for us in Florida to claim a race like that with a great candidate who could potentially run statewide someday. And so we need to be thinking about expansion and growth and not repositioning and not playing defense this time. And to me, the most important thing we can do this year to do that is to launch a national youth voter registration drive. We need to get youth performance higher. The part of our coalition that is most Democratic votes the least. We can change that. We shouldn't accept that as a reality. We can, through money and determination, alter the electorate. It's what Obama did in 2008, and it's what we know how. It's what we've done in Georgia and Arizona and other places where we've won. And we need to go change the electorate and make the electorate more favorable to us. I think we have to seize the day. And what I'm proud of is the Biden campaign, which launched, has just put up new ads today where they're now up on the air in North Carolina and Florida, for example, right? They're up in 8 states today. Let me read them to make sure I get them right. They're in Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So the 6 core battlegrounds, which are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which is where they went up last week. They've now expanded. They're growing, right? They're taking more real estate. They're going into the red states of North Carolina and Florida to try to grow our vote. This is the way I think we have to think this time. They've given us an opportunity to grow, to get to 55. And I hope tomorrow I'm hosting at 3:00 the beginning of a series of conversations about the youth vote, an area that I've worked on for over 2 decades. And I'm being joined by Laura Brill from the Civic Center, who's going to talk about a national campaign to make it easier for high school kids to register and pre-register and participate in our politics. She's doing great work. I've been very impressed with the theory of the case. Come tomorrow. If you can't make it live, it'll be recorded. And then finally, I just want to say that I'm just incredibly encouraged by the Biden rollout. I think the frame that they began with, which is around more freedom, less freedom. A lot of people, I think, thought that the Biden campaign would be very conventional in their rollout. It would be, better on the economy, healthcare, prescription drugs, the kind of checklist that you often see in Democratic ads. That's not what they've done. I think they've taken a big swing. I think this is a confident campaign that feels good about where they are, particularly relative to Trump and DeSantis, two sides of the MAGA coin, right? And by leaning into freedom, into talking about the preservation of our liberties and freedom and democracy, they're diving right into the emotional core, I think, of what's really been driving our politics. The reason that you're here tonight, the reason that so many people have given money, unprecedented amounts of money, and done all this volunteering is that you're worried about your country, right? This is not, you're worried about, hey, if we lose this election, we could lose our democracy. And so that energy and that passion and that fear is really what's driving our politics. And Biden went right in there, right? In that first video, they dove right in and tapped into that emotional core that I think is going to be so critical for us to win. I've been so pleased. They've now produced 2 videos and 2 ads. The new ads that went up today are much more economically focused. You should take a look. I try to write about the ads as they come out on Hopium and talk about them as somebody who's been doing this a long time and a former TV producer, to talk about the ads. You're going to see a lot of video discussion on Hopium, and I hope you'll join me there. If you're not a Hopium subscriber, it's free. If you want to be a paid member to help pay for this work, please join me there, right? But I think we should be very pleased about the ambition and the boldness of the early Biden campaign. I don't know that Biden went really big legislatively in 21 and 22. The question was, were they going to sort of roll the dice and go big and seize ground, as I was saying, in this election? And I think so far, I think they're going for it here, right? We should feel good about the energy, the intensity, the narrative, the messaging. They feel like they're in the zone right now. And I'm really just super pleased with how they're coming out of the box. I mean, they're taking it to those guys, and they need to, right? They deserve it. I mean, they're playing around with fire. The Republicans, they've given in to extremism and extremists in ways that has almost no precedent in our history. And we need to make sure that we don't just win this next election and stumble over the finish line, but that we get to 55 and win big and have it really be seen as a repudiation of this extremism that's overtaken one of our 2 political parties. So, we have to continue to roll the dice and go big and not play it safe. And I think the Biden campaign is coming out of the box very much in that way. And I'm just super pleased. And I'm happy for them too. I mean, I was at a briefing at the White House last week with some of the folks that run the White House that had some people in to talk about what the White House was doing. There was there wasn't that much politics. And you could just see in their body language, right, that they were happy and confident and strong. And, I've been there when things aren't like that, right? And when people are pulling in and they're nervous and they're scared and they're defensive. And that's not what I felt when I was there last week. And I'm just so happy for Joe Biden. I'm happy for the team. They've made the decision, they're going, and they're going to go take it to the Republicans. Last thing I'll say is that on the debt ceiling, and I've gone a little bit long and we'll get right into it, but I go back to this idea that it's an economic and fiscal conversation we're having. It's the debt ceiling is one manifestation of it. And as I've been writing this week on Hopium, is that what the Republicans are really doing here to sort of pull away from all the bullshit is that they're trying to push the economy into recession and default to hurt Biden's reelection. That's what's happening here. This is not a fiscally responsible party. The last 3 Republican presidents saw the deficit go way up under their watch when they were in the White House. The last 3 Democratic presidents saw the deficit go way down, including Joe Biden, on their watch. We've been the party of fiscal responsibility. They have no track record to point to in terms of like when they've been in power, the deficit's gone up every time. The deficit under Trump was the largest as a percentage of GDP since World War II. He had the worst fiscal record of any president since World War II. And the deficit went up every year of the Trump presidency, and it's gone down every year of the Biden presidency. So they're doing this because what they want to do, this isn't about fiscal rectitude. This isn't about being responsible. This is about pushing the economy into recession in order to wound Joe Biden, or to push it into default to wound Joe Biden and the Democrats. This is such brazenly naked politics. It's disappointing. It's another manifestation of their extremism. This is why we have to continue to fight every day, not just in elections, but 24/7, 365. I've produced an enormous amount of analysis to help you engage in this economic conversation in a more intelligent way. We'll continue to do that. I've got my big presentation next Tuesday. Please come if you can. But this is deeply consequential. This is an early important test of the Biden team this year. I think we'll pass. I don't think the Republicans are in strong position with the public. They have a ridiculous argument, and I think we're going to win this. But we just have to make sure there isn't tremendous cost along the way. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the White House really starts to engage now that we know that the debt ceiling could be, we could hit the debt ceiling in a month. I mean, it's happening much quicker, I think, than people understood. So it's game on. Let's learn this economic stuff. Let's talk about the good work of Democrats. Let's remind everybody there's a fundamental contrast in the economy. With Democrats, you have growth, lower deficits, American progress. With Republicans, you've got recession, higher deficits, American decline. We have to work together to establish that fundamental contrast this year. If we can do that, it's going to make it much more likely that we have the election next year that we all want to have. Okay, let me get to questions. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to take them from the chat. And I'm not going to be doing raise hands tonight because this is a big public event, and I just want to have the security of, frankly, just taking it from the chat. Bridget wrote, Simon, can you tell us about your upcoming book? It's a great question, Bridget. Struggling to get the proposal finished. I'm optimistic about it selling. This has been a little bit more of a daunting process than I had understood. Perhaps I was naive, never having written a book before. But it's going to be a little bit about 2022, but it's going to be more about, with Democrats, things get better and how, we have to go for it. And it's going to celebrate the good works of the Democratic Party and the party that we've all been part of. And if you can come to it, Democrats, or watch it, if you can't watch it live, please watch it in May. It's a very inspiring presentation. It's about the remarkable achievements of the Democratic Party. And I'll just give you one stat from that presentation, which is since 1989, and when a new age of globalization began, there have been 48 million jobs created in America. 46 million of them have been created under Democratic presidents, basically all of them. Under Joe Biden, just in the last few months, we've seen the lowest peacetime unemployment rate since World War II, the lowest uninsured rate in American history, the lowest poverty rate in American history. And we go on and on through the deck showing how when we've been in power, things get better. When they're in power, they don't. And again, I talk about how we have to establish this fundamental contrast and reject symmetry. There's not a left and a right. There's sort of a good, competent, modern party and another party that continues to not do its part. And we have to be more aggressive about rejecting this kind of left-right symmetry that is, I think, created such distortions about the realities of the two parties over the last 35 years. So let's hope the book happens. I'm a little behind on it, as I think every writer would say, but I appreciate you asking, Bridget. And I obviously, Hopium is my sketch pad every day, right? It's how I work things through, and many of the things I'm writing in Hopium will show up in the book, assuming the book happens, and I'm optimistic about it. Let me go. Thornton asks, how do Democrats regain voters in states that have turned heavily Republican, like Idaho and Ohio? And listen, I get asked this at every time I present, because many of you don't live in the battleground blue states or in a blue state. And I think that there is no simple answer here. I mean, what we know from Georgia and Arizona, where we've just recently flipped, since 2004, when Bush was the last Republican president to win the popular vote in the Electoral College vote, we've flipped 6 states from Republican to Democrat from that election: Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and the Southwest. And I've been heavily involved in that project for the party, and then Georgia and Virginia. And, there's, in my view, the 2 states that have just flipped recently, Arizona and Georgia, we followed a very similar playbook, which was there was year-round investment in voter registration and engaging new voters and voters who are marginal, that we don't often talk to make the electorate more democratic. And I think that's got to become a universal activity for all parties. It's not easy, it's expensive, right? It's not, not every party's got a lot of money, but people who are under 45 are overwhelmingly democratic. And the reason why I call for a national voter registration drive, not a voter registration drive of young people just in the battlegrounds, but everywhere, and have this be the responsibility of every party in the country, is that that's the place that we can go get more votes in now, right? I mean, and you just got to build, right? You can't shoot the moon you've got to do it incrementally. It's how Georgia and Arizona did it. They came back every 2 years and they kept gaining ground, right? They did it by changing the electorate and investing in making the electorate more favorable for Democrats. I think we're going to have to do the same thing in all 50 states. And given that, particularly, I think what you see in the data is that younger Republicans are really breaking from the older party. They are closer to Democrats in many ways, because on issues around guns and abortion and so on, there isn't as bright a line with younger Republicans as there are with older Republicans. And so I think there's a lot of real estate we can gain in the under 45 vote in all 50 states. And that needs to be, I think, that's a universal opportunity everywhere. And particularly with abortion and the continued mass shootings, the continued shootings in driveways. I mean, I tweeted today that, the Republican Party's agenda literally is more dead kids in schools, right? More 10-year-olds giving birth and more childbirth, far women under unbelievable duress in a country that already does a terrible job in managing pregnancy. More now they want, Russia winning the war in Ukraine, the climate, the planet warming faster, and they now want recession and default. I mean, if we can't beat that party in 2024, shame on us, because they have become advocates of just an agenda that's just so extraordinarily extreme, so dangerous for the country, so bad for the people that live here. It's the opposite of what you would think in a political party and what they're trying to do, because they're not actually trying to offer people a better life. They're offering them a far worse life, and we are offering a better life. And I think we can win this debate. We've been winning it in the battlegrounds in the last 3 elections. We need to, that's why I'm talking about trying to have a national voter registration drive, win the economic argument across the whole country. These are universal activities we can engage in. But Thornton, on your question, is there's only, the way that we know we've done this in other places is the people in the state have to take responsibility for doing the work. They're not going to be saved by some outside group. The money in Georgia was raised by people in Georgia. The money in Arizona was raised, and the people who did that work were from Arizona. States have to take responsibility for continuing to grow their electorate and to reach out to voters. There's no magic solution here. And I think this year we have a big opportunity to grow, expand, and I think we have to seize it everywhere in all 50 states. Let me go to S. Kindler says, I really appreciate how you brought attention to the Wisconsin Supreme Court and Jacksonville mayoral races. I hope you have your eyes on Virginia next. Control of the state Senate and House delegates are up for grabs after a comprehensive redistricting. Youngkin, the GOP will be pouring in millions of dollars. So look, I think after we get through May 16th is the Jacksonville race, and all of you should, there's an interview with Donna Deegan on my site on Hopium, and you can make calls and text. I hope everyone here tonight will do a shift, 2 to 3 hour shift. If we have strong turnout, she'll win. It's that simple. I mean, she's been ahead in all the polls. And it's, an odd time of year to have an election, and those types of elections often favor Republicans. That's why they're set on those dates. And so we just need to push Democratic turnout up, which is something we've learned how to do in the last few elections, the texting, the calls, the postcards, all the things that we now do. We can do it. And they've got those systems up, and you can just go to her website and volunteer and find ways to help. The Duval County Democrats also have phone banks and other things you can find. I don't know what we're going to do after May 16th. And I do want, for those of you who are part of Hopium, we should be talking about it. Virginia is clearly important. There's some other mayoral races and other races that we have to focus on this year. I live in DC. I mean, Virginia is just, you can see it out the window here earlier tonight. Potomac River is behind me. And so, Virginia is going to matter. I'm speaking at a major 2-day conference of Virginia Democrats, July 22nd and 23rd, and I'm giving 2 different talks there. So I'm engaged with people there, and I will be very active at Hopium as we get closer to that. Let me go down, try to take things in order here. I'm going to try to go to people, not a second time. Rob writes, how do we, that the economy's not been, inflation's been too high, right? I think the way we have to talk about this is that we've had strong growth, right? We've had the deficits come way down, wages have been way up, right? The bottom 50% has come way up, and inflation's been too high. I mean, we can do both of those things at the same time, right? We don't have to start by talking about the negative. And I think one of the things we talk about here in my Hopium project is how Democrats have to get much better at speaking in declarative sentences and starting from a positive framework, and say things like, Joe Biden's been a good president, period. The country is better off, period. The Democratic Party is strong, period. What we often do is we then say those things and then have a comma and a but or a however. And the but and however is the argument that Republicans make against us. And then we say their arguments for them. We do their work for them. This is deeply ingrained in the way that we talk as Democrats. And it's a problem. It's a problem. I mean, it's a serious problem. We spend an enormous amount of time making Republican arguments for them, and we have to stop it, right? It's really important. We have to make our arguments and make our case. And I'll just give you an example. The economy's been really strong under Joe Biden, period. The country is better off, period, right? These things are just fact and true. If you want to challenge them, fine, let's have the debate. But we've got to start by making the case for things that we've done. And what happens is, if we don't make the case, then who is going to make the case, right? And so, one of the reasons why I'm so confident that we can gain ground on the economy is that people don't really know what's happened in the country. I mean, I talk about this, for those of you who've heard me talk before. Navigator, which is a polling outfit that I really like and write about a lot and use their work, had a poll in January of 2022 where they asked a simple question, which is, were more jobs created in 2021 or were more jobs created in 2021 than 2020? And this is like a sky's blue question, right? So in 2020, we lost 3 million jobs. And in 2021, we gained 8 million jobs, the most in any year in American history. So kind of an easy question. Only 20% of Americans knew that more jobs were created in 2021 than 2020. And so, the economy today, as I was saying, it's possible the economy today is better than it's ever been in American history. We have the lowest unemployment rate, lowest poverty rate, the lowest poverty rate, the lowest uninsured rate in American history just in the last few months. Lowest, the stock market is high, right? People at the bottom 50% have seen their wages go way up. We know that median earnings were up in last year, and so even with inflation. And we just have to figure out how to come out from underneath the red wave, this sort of constant negative noise that comes from the right-wing noise machine. I mean, I talk about how I think the central project of MAGA is to put negative sentiment into our discourse, to make us feel bad about our democracy, our country, our leaders, our institutions, each other, the economy, everything. They just want us to feel bad about everything. And one of the ways we fight MAGA is we don't go along with it. We don't obey in advance, right? We don't play by their playbook. We create our own playbook. And a lot of what you'll see on Hopium is I'm living in all this positive space. I know the arguments against us. I understand. We hear them all every day. They're much more present in our discourse than the positive things. But together, millions of us can work together to put this positive sentiment, our positive story, into the daily discourse. There's an urgency to this because of the loudness gap that I described. And so that's part of the story, Rob, is that, I know that you hear from Republicans, well, everybody thinks the economy is terrible. I think that there's a problem with our polling on economic issues. I really do believe that there's going to have to be a complete rethink, because when you're at the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, the lowest uninsured rate, the lowest poverty rate, there's no objective way to get to a place where the economy is bad in that case, right? And yet that's where we've been, because the economy is good and inflation's too high. The economic recovery has been really strong. By the way, stronger here than in any other G7 country. I mean, I could go down the list of all the accomplishments. It's in my presentation if you come on Tuesday. And so we've got there's sort of a discipline that has to happen in our politics, where we're living far more in spending our time when we're engaging with others, living in places of positive and going on offense instead of being scared and playing defense all the time. And we have to stop doing Republicans' work for them in our discourse. And this is really, really important. I went on Fox News for 17 years and did thousands of appearances on Fox. And it was always very adversarial, but I had one or two things I was going to say, no matter what, right? Whatever the questions were, is like, yeah, Barack Obama, the economy is doing really well, right? Or whatever it was. I mean, I didn't allow them to dictate the terms of the debate. And I got my positive points in back when Fox was fair and balanced, before it went completely crazy in recent years. And so, we have to get better at this. And when people ask me, well, why isn't the DNC doing a better job? Why isn't Joe Biden doing a better job? Well, what are you doing to help with this? We're all citizens of this country. We all have responsibilities here. And a lot of where our energy has gone into these campaign work. We now have to do the work to sort of create a better discourse in this country, which is going to be even more important with AI coming, where there's going to be now opportunities. I mean, I'm going to be writing a lot about AI. I've been a little shaken personally by what I'm seeing with AI and how quickly it's coming, and the ability for it to degrade our discourse even further, the degradation of Twitter. These are, we're up in a very adversarial media environment and information environment. So we've got to do our work and get very loud together. And I think, we can do remarkable things together if we do that in the coming months. So Feinstein, she should step down. And I think it's ridiculous. We're past the point of this being okay. And I'm disappointed in the Democratic Party for sort of pussyfooting around this. And I think that's kind of an easy one. I've never said it in public before, but California deserves to have, it's a remarkable state. They deserve to have a vigorous senator, and they don't have one, and they deserve one, and she should step down, and Gavin Newsom should appoint a new senator. Let me just go through and see other questions. Oh, Leslie asked, I posted today about Colin Allred. I know Colin a little bit. I've been a supporter of his. I haven't spent a lot of time with him, but incredibly impressive video launch today. I mean, really one of the best launch videos I've ever seen of a candidate. These kind of 2 to 3 minute videos have started becoming commonplace in the 2018 cycle. They're the way they introduce you to the candidate. They go viral, they raise money. It's kind of a new form. It's not an ad, it's a video, right? These things never show up in TV. They're designed to engage you over the internet. And if you haven't watched it, it's really worth it. It's one of the best I've seen. He's very impressive. I love the way they just take it to Cruz in a very kind of, artful way. It's just great. He's going to be a great candidate. I like to see, before I recommend to people that they give, I think we have to see some of the early polling to make sure he's really got a shot. I don't think he would have gotten in if he didn't have a shot, Colin's got a big future in front of him, and he didn't need to go. Remember, Beto did very much better against Cruz than he did against Abbott. Cruz is weak. He's not popular in Texas. He can be beaten. Beto came very, very close, 2.5 points in 2018. So this is a race to watch. This is about expansion, growth, right? Competing in Texas. Biden only lost Texas by 5 points in 2020. It's one of those, after Florida and North Carolina, it's the next state, right? Up, if you really look. And if we were to expand the national map, Texas is kind of the next one on the line. We got a ways to go there. But again, like other states, if you look at the performance of people who are younger in Texas, they're overwhelmingly Democratic. And the electorate's changing there, which is why there's so much voter suppression there, why it's so hard to register voters there. And I think the issues around guns and abortion are going to further drive younger Texans into the Democratic camp. And we've got a great candidate, I think, to be a way station to make that transition comfortable for them. He's going to be great. I was excited today. Let me just see other questions here. Well, Jan, I don't think we've given up on Florida. I just think we had a very tough election, and both the leading Republican candidates are from Florida. And so I think it just pragmatically, there's a limited amount of money, what makes sense, but the Biden campaign's on the air there. I mean, they're spending money there. Kamala and he have been going into the state. At the White House briefing I was at last week, they made it clear they want to compete in Florida. Well, here we are. Their ads, they're spending money today. And it is why Donna Deegan's race matters so much. It would be great for us to have a big win and take away the largest city in Florida. The guy who's running as a Republican, it's an open seat, is a DeSantis ally. DeSantis is heavily involved in the race. This would be a loss for him if we could win there. So please do help Donna if you could. It would be, just a little bit of work. If everyone here tonight does one, shift, it could really make a difference in the race. Joy asks about, are we willing to do what's necessary on the debt ceiling, 14th Amendment? I'm still learning my way through this issue. And I think Greg Sargent has a terrific piece today in the Washington Post, for those of you who have access to the Post, about what our options are. Paul Krugman wrote about it today as well. I think the Biden team is exploring their options. I fully expect that we're going to come out the other side of this ahead of the Republicans. I mean, the danger for the Republican Party right now on this issue is that this is the only issue where they're performing well. And if there's an engagement with us over months where they further erode on the economy, they're going to be doing enormous damage to their ability to be competitive next year. I mean, they are not really competitive on any other major issue other than the economy. And from a strategy standpoint, what McCarthy's doing is a little bit crazy, right? I mean, he's endangering the only place where they're connected to voters. They're not connected to voters on debt. They're connected to voters on the economy. And they may be in the process of throwing that all away. And this may end up looking like, sheer lunacy, a few months from now. And remember, in 95, 96, we had these kinds of engagements between Clinton and Gingrich, and they were devastating for Republicans. I mean, Clinton was very wounded after the 94 midterms. And, he was able to use this battle over the government shutdowns with Gingrich to end up winning that election by 8 points. And we won 1996 in 1995. I mean, the engagement we had, the battles that we had with Gingrich and the Republicans in that that first time they had won Congress in almost 60 years, we won the election through those engagements. So there's a lot of history here that should have been, the warning signs for McCarthy should have been much brighter. But I think also, as everyone is commenting on, he's lost control of his conference to Marjorie Taylor Greene and the extremists, and he's put the party, I think, in a very, very dangerous place. I mean, just at a strategy level, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, you could argue it makes sense because it's the only way they can really beat Biden, by sort of pushing the country into recession or default. But my God, the chance of them coming out the other side of this, somehow convincing the public who thinks so ill of them that they had some kind of righteous thing and Biden was the one who wasn't playing ball, I just don't think they have any chance of winning that argument. I know that it may feel that they do. I just don't think that a sustained engagement with Joe Biden on this, they're going to beat us. And I don't really know how it's going to play out. I'm not in the White House. They've got some decisions to make. But, are you going to trust this White House team against Kevin McCarthy and his band of crazy people? I mean, we'll win this fight. I'm pretty confident about it. The key is to make sure that the economy and the American people aren't damaged in the process. And so, you've got one responsible actor and one irresponsible actor, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But we shouldn't be, there's a video I tweeted this out this afternoon. There is video of Trump in 2019 saying that Pelosi and Schumer are not going to breach the debt ceiling and that nobody should play around with the debt ceiling. I mean, there's video of the president in 2019, President Trump, saying this is off limits and no one should ever play around the debt ceiling. I mean, the whole thing is just it's unprecedented. It's another manifestation of their extremism and just their lack of connectedness to having an agenda that's, in the national interest of the United States. I mean, they're fighting against our interests in so many ways, which is why we have to go big and keep winning. Let me just see. I think I'm just gonna, Karen mentions about Heather Boyd in Pennsylvania, a state rep race we need to win. I haven't really leaned into that race, but I know many people in my Hopium site are. You should, if folks want to do more work other than Donna, that's another race where people can help. Let me just see if I can sum up the rest of the questions. Let me just conclude, because I think we're getting, I think I've covered a lot of the sort of elements of the questions that have been here tonight. I just want to say, first of all, thanks to all of you. I mean, it's great that you're taking time out of your day or evening to be here to talk about the future of our country and our politics. And I just want to say how optimistic I am about what we can do this cycle. I really do think that I'd much rather be us than them. That's a line I use all the time. I really believe that. But I think we have to go to work now. We have to work hard now. And what I've been so encouraged by is in all these groups that I've been speaking to, these grassroots groups that have sprung up in recent years, I've probably done 10 different groups. I'm doing another 6 or 7 just in the next few weeks. You can go to my Hopium site and request, me to speak at one of your groups if you have a gathering. I'm trying to do as many as I can. I just want to conclude by saying what makes me so hopeful and makes me so optimistic is the engagement that I've had with all of you. And the time and the passion, the love of country, the patriotism that I feel when I'm in the groups that I speak to on a regular basis. I did my first in-person group in Montgomery County a week ago. And what you just feel in these engagements and the time you're spending here is that, people love their country. They want it. They don't want it to slip into autocracy. They want their kids and their grandkids to have the same opportunities they had, and they're willing to fight for it. And man, what could be better than that? And I think that when we get through to the other side of this, all this activity that we've seen, people stepping up and taking unprecedented steps and giving money and making calls and all the things that we do, I think we're going to come out of this hopefully with a stronger democracy than before. I think that the Biden team needs to be thinking about a big political reform agenda. That if we win again, these are the kinds of changes we want to make. Supreme Court, ethics, make the list of things that you think should happen. There needs to be a period of reform. We modernize our government, right? We have to make things better and more modern and more democratic and go big with that. I think we're at the early stages of some of those conversations, but I think it's something we can work on together, in the coming months. And so I just want to end by saying thank you for being part of this. If you're not a Hopium Chronicles subscriber, please, it's free. Please join. It's a great community. We've got great conversations happening every day. I love the platform at Substack. It's been terrific. I miss my old home at NDN, but I'm really happy with my new home and the new community we're building together. And, just put your head down, go to work, team. We've got a lot to do. I'm very grateful at the boldness that we're seeing from the Biden team. And this is about growing, expanding. It's about taking away rhetorical space, freedom, democracy, American flag. Biden, it's about geographic space, going into North Carolina, Florida, other red states and other red places. We just had a good election in Lincoln, Nebraska last night. And it's also demographic space. We have to reclaim some of the lost ground, Hispanics. We have to use the abortion issue to grow our coalition, young voters. It's all about now growing and getting bigger and expanding and going on offense and not putting up with their shit anymore and not letting them push us around in the information space every day. We've got to take our country back. And I think we're well on the way to do it. And I know that we'll get there if we all keep working hard. So thanks everybody very much. This will be up on the Hopium site either tonight, probably tomorrow morning, if you want to share with other people, and stay in touch. And thanks. Have a good night all. Bye-bye.